I'm Annette Polan. I'm an artist from Huntington, West Virginia. When I describe my childhood to friends, it's like the ideal childhood. Huntington was really the perfect place to grow up. You know, it was very simple life, but family-oriented. My mother was one of the founders of the museum in Huntington. A group of women got together after the Second World War, and they wanted some place for their children to learn about art. And there were art classes. Whatever the museum offered, Saturday mornings were spent taking these classes. So a career in the arts came on sort of accidentally. I majored in art history in college, and the summer I graduated, my art teacher from the Baldwin School invited me to join her and her husband on this trip to Europe, eating things that I had never tasted before, seeing things, going to museums, but, just tasting a creative life, living on no money. That was really when I decided I want to be an artist. I actually started out as a printmaker. I did these very conceptual prints about location, about geography. What I realized in doing these, that I was really interested not in the land itself, but in the people who live there. And I had noticed that I had a knack. I could look at something and render it, a likeness. When I graduated from college with no marketable skills, I decided, well, I'll go to graduate school. And in the beginning of the 70s, there was this conference on women in the arts. If you were a woman and you were in the arts, LA, Chicago, New York, they were at this conference, and I met everybody. Women have always existed in the arts. Traditionally, women weren't recognized. Today, 2021, work by women artists sells for a fraction of what work by male artists. And we sort of measure its worth by how much it sells for. There were 3 women on the faculty at the Corcoran, which is one of the major art schools in the country. There were no women directors, none, but it's possible. I lucked into a job teaching at the Corcoran, and that was the beginning of a 40-year career as a professor in the arts. Somebody called the Corcoran and asked for a recommendation for someone to paint a portrait. And they said, well, we have somebody on the faculty who teaches portraiture. And that really was how my profession began. So my portraits have ended up well placed. I have done a governor of West Virginia, senators, I've done chairs of different committees. I did Sandra Day O'Connor's portrait. The most recent portrait, one that just ended up at the National Portrait Gallery, of General Wilma Vaught. She was the highest ranking woman in the Air Force when she retired. I retired from the Corcoran about 10 years ago and focused entirely on my studio practice. During this COVID year, I had to put portraits aside because I paint in this very traditional way. I photograph people, but then they come for sittings. So that was no longer possible. And I started this, I call it my COVID Mandala, meditations on an emergency. I worked on it from March 31st, 2020 to March 31st, 2021. It's just layer on layer on layer. What happened last week is covered up by this week, but it's images mostly from the Washington Post of everything that was going on, the good, the bad, the horrible, the beautiful, during this difficult year. Some of them are just beautiful photographs. Some of them are meaningful people. Some of them, there's war, there's famine, there are wildfires. It's just a little bit of everything. For my own emotional stability and well-being, I need to work. And I've been lucky. I've just always found something to keep my hands going. So I could be anxious, fearful, distraught over life outside, and I come into this space, this is my little temple, and start working and forget. My grandfather moved to Huntington very deliberately as an immigrant from Lithuania, a Jewish immigrant. He looked at the map and he saw this area that was on the main line of the C&O Railroad and the Ohio River. And he came and he built a lot of Huntington. I am a West Virginian. It's so in my roots, in my identity. I'm so proud of coming from this beautiful state. Unfortunately, leaving West Virginia was key to my success as an artist. So my advice to artists, network. You don't have to move permanently, but you have to get out there. You have to see what's going on outside of your little cocoon. You have to meet people who can help you make it happen. Whatever you choose to rise to the top requires sacrifice, hard work, grit. We're great about grit in West Virginia, and support of people who love you. My life isn't over. I'm still working. I still love my work, but I love the choices that I've made. And some of them I wasn't even aware I was making choices. All my travels, I've traveled a lot. I've been all over the world. And I think subconsciously, I'm always looking for that Greenbrier River.